The Nigerian oil and gas industry is helping to strengthen local content penetration with many opportunities being created to drive the industry. Well, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, Simbi Wabote, disclosed this at an oil and gas conference here in Abuja. And the Rise News correspondent Ovieteme George tells us more.
It is the Nigerian Oil and Gas Conference at the International Conference Center, Abuja. Present at the venue are industry operators, service providers, stakeholders, and other participants, all appreciating the need to develop and sustain local capacities and capabilities. The Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board appreciates the Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Temipre Silva, for the approval of the 7 ministerial regulations to provide legal backing to the various aspects of the Nigerian content practice in the NOGICT Act 2010.
We utilize this seminar to deepen our local content practice by providing clarity, expositions, tips, and guidance to industry practitioners on provisions of the law, regulations, guidelines, tools, and initiatives such as the Nigerian Content Plan, the Nigerian Content Equipment Certificates, the management of expatriate quota, research and development, and Nigerian Content Intervention Funds, and others. The ministerial regulations seek to provide a framework for monitoring the implementation of the prescribed minimum standards for training in the oil and gas industry and achieving definite outcomes regarding the skill, experience, and exposure of personnel in the oil and gas industry.
The NCDMB and the National Insurance Commission exchanged guidelines for business implementation.
I'm just here to re-emphasize the need for collaboration and also to ensure that the local capacity we have all yearned for is achieved. I want to thank the oil and gas family, and we look forward to effective compliance with this regulation.
I am so happy with the theme, funding the Nigerian energy mix for sustainable economic growth. We need to grow as a people. We need to grow as an industry. Nigeria needs to grow and grow fully.
When I say that it's building, it means that it describes the modalities.
The first day of the program also featured a panel of discussion among key players in the oil and gas industry. Ovieteme George, Arise News.
Well, thank you, Ovieteme, for that report. And for more on this, we're now being joined by the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, Simbi Wabote. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight on the program. We know that it's a busy 3 days for you as well as the other key players in the oil and gas industry in Nigeria as this conference goes on. But let's talk about the fact that, you know, your board was actually set up some 12 years ago, looking at ensuring that we see a lot of local content, especially managing, you know, our economy when oil and gas is concerned. So what would you say are the achievements 12 years after since the board was established?
Well, thank you for having me. In terms of achievement, the Nigerian Content Board perhaps has exceeded expectations from Nigerians because we've really moved the needle. 12 years since its establishment. A concrete example is to show you that before the enactment of the law in 2010, the Nigerian content in our oil and gas industry was less than 5%. But today, as I speak to you, it is at 42% in terms of achievement. Also, in the industry, we used to spend about $21 billion year on year in oil and gas activities, and less than 5% of that was retained in country. Today, we have about $8 billion we've been able to claw back. And our objective is that by the year 2027, we hope to attain 70% Nigerian content in the oil and gas industry. Because don't forget, when we started the exploration and exploitation of hydrocarbon more than 50 years ago, the focus of government was in taxes and royalties. But since the enactment of the law, we've been able to participate in the entire value chain, right from the upstream up until the downstream. This is a tremendous achievement. Another example I wish to give to you is when the discussion started with regards to modular refineries, and people were lost as to how to establish them. NCDMB got involved. Today, we have perhaps the biggest modular refinery that is in operation in the Bigwe in Imo State, refining about 5,000 barrels of crude oil per day. In terms of human capacity, before the enactment of the law, most of the oil and gas industry, particularly the international companies, were managed by expats. But today, about 97% of those employed in a company like Shell are Nigerians. Even the NLNG, as an example, when it was established, almost 70% were expats. Today, I can tell you 98% of those managing one of Nigeria's most profitable ventures are all Nigerians. The entire board of NLNG, apart from those who are partners, is just occupied by Nigerians. The MD is a Nigerian. Even in production, in the upstream sector, today Nigerians are responsible for about 15% of the nation's crude and 60% of the domestic gas that we use in this country. So we have made tremendous achievement. Little wonder people want us to extend that beyond the oil and gas sector. But let us get it right to where we want to, particularly in the sector, before we move forward.
You have to start from somewhere at least.
Yes,
absolutely.
A tremendous achievement. But is this expectations that you've exceeded limited to just human capacity development? How about technology? How about equipment? When you say local content, is it just restricted to Nigerians being members of the board and being majority of the humans working there? How are we doing when it comes to the other side, the flip side of the energy?
That's a very important question. It's not just about human capacity. If you develop human capacity to manage an industry like that, and upscale it to 98%. It's not just about the humans, it's also their technological know-how and their innovative ideas with which they run the business. An example is during the COVID, Nigerian production never came down one day because when the expat left, the Nigerians were there to still operate the system. In terms of technology transfer, we are trying. If you ask me the question if we are there, we're not there yet because technology takes time and great innovations also take time. What we are doing in NCDMB is to actively support research and development because we know that without R&D, no industry can move forward. You still depend on foreign technology to survive. Hence, we established a 10-year roadmap for research and development, where we are establishing centers of excellence in some of the universities in the country, not just centers of excellence for name, centers of excellence that will encourage research and development from the conception up until commercialization. So we're making good progress. In that regard, we have established a $50 million research and development grant, which is available to Nigerian researchers, innovators to gain access. In terms of funding, one of the greatest challenges in developing local content is making funds available. Because in the international climb, they get loans with single digits interest rate. In some instances, even negative digit interest rates. And you cannot compete if you don't have funds. So today we have established a $350 million local content fund with the Bank of Industry. And we make bold to say it is one of those schemes that have been extremely successful because the payback is about 99% in terms of people responding and taking from that fund and paying back to
Which
encourage
is quite
others.
incredible from what you have mentioned, really, and also looking at the fact that we moved from 5% to about 42%. But of course, I'm sure you must have noticed some loopholes where some areas that you know that Nigerians are not particularly great in when it comes to oil and gas production. So what are you doing really to ensure, you said there's a target of 70% beyond just the personnel occupying the board and being employees of this company, but really taking a hold of the oil that we produce and ensure that even the production of the machines needed are done here in the country?
No, it's like I always say, development of local content is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes time, and building of technology also takes time. 12 years is not a long period, and we are putting the building blocks with which we will begin to manufacture most of the components we need in the industry. Hence, NCDMB is establishing industrial parks for oil and gas manufacturers. I make bold to say that in Q1 next year, we will commission 2 of those industrial parks. Where you build those industrial parks, you ask people to take position in those industrial parks. And one of the greatest challenge with manufacturing in this country is power. So today we are building those parks. They will be powered by gas-fired power plants and provide opportunity to manufacture in country. So it's a building block, and we are making great progress in moving in that trajectory. We just hope and pray that we continue that momentum, and I believe that in no distant future, you're going to see all those achievements in terms of taking hold of the equipment we need in the industry.
We are hoping and praying. When you mentioned the phrase marathon and no sprints, I remember the golf you played yesterday. But let's not talk about the golf. Let's not talk about the golf. Today you are talking about 7 ministerial regulations to help strengthen local content. We also know that we have a problem of implementation when it comes to Nigeria. So beyond the talks we've had in the 4 walls of the event center today, how does this reverberate when it comes to implementation? How do you take it from that conversation in that room to proper implementation? And, you know, if you could break it down very easily and very quickly for us, what do these 7 ministerial regulations actually do to help improve local content?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You know, when laws are made, they do not answer all the questions, as it were. So that's why in the Act itself, there's a provision for the minister to make regulations in order to interpret some of these areas that you see as lacuna. So those ministerial regulations are expected to make life a lot easier for practitioners, because it then breaks down those particular clauses within the Act and make it a lot simpler for people to understand. For instance, the regulation on professionals in the oil and gas industry, as an example. Today, you have a lot of experts who come, because one thing you must understand is that local content is not about Nigerianization. It is more about domiciliation and domestication of value-add activities in country. Hence, you expect foreigners, experts, to come into the country with new technology, new know-how. But if they come, they must also get registered with the professional bodies that you have in the country. As an example is, I cannot go to the United Kingdom to practice as an engineer if I am not registered with the ICE, which is the Institute of Civil Engineers in the UK. So same thing here in Nigeria. One of those regulations is meant to address that, because if we don't get these professionals to register to practice in the country, you begin to have technicians who come and tell themselves they are engineers and all whatnot. So one of that regulation is to address that. Another regulation is also on technology transfer. How do we ensure that this happens? It's been broken down explicitly for practitioners to understand the rudiments of that technology transfer, how it benefits the country, how it also benefits them. So that regulation is also in place. The other one is about training, capacity building. Today
Which is
you
quite
have
critical.
Absolutely. Today you have every man and his dog being a trainer, wants to build capacity. But what's the standard you set within this industry to ensure that those delivering those services have the requisite qualification, have the atmosphere and ambience to deliver those capacity building initiatives that we introduced in NCDMB.
So we have the right policies in place, but implementation really is what we need to look forward to. But for now, we'd have to say thank you so much for joining us tonight on the program. Simbi Wabote, here's the Executive Secretary of Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board. And well done to you and your team for all that you're doing. And of course, we're hoping that beyond even the 70% target, we actually have like a full Nigerian, team in place. We've discovered oil since 1956.
Yes.
Time we take over.
And maybe a national golf team.